Welcome to another episode of AyAyAyAI.
Ay, 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 ay! Oh my god, I think I get a little back feed on that one.
I don't know. I think it came off just fine. And
Okay.
we are talking today, we are discussing today something that, well, disclaimer, not the subject matter expert of, far from it, not even qualified to talk about it, but we'll pretend like we do. I see a lot of doctors in TV shows playing doctors, but they're not really doctors. So for next hour or so, maybe we can play a doctor or play at least a patient advocate, right?
Mhm.
Because we have to advocate for ourselves as a patient. We are dealing with healthcare a lot, at least in a certain age, because we majority of the people are going to the hospitals and experiencing what a healthcare looks like. Either they fork out the cash money for it, or they have the healthcare insurance taking care of it, or their jobs paying for it. Whatever the case is, we have to advocate for our health and our patient care, right? As in, that's what we experience. So, not a subject matter expert in giving healthcare, but subject matter expertise in receiving healthcare.
Yeah, and it's weird, how we talk about, well, healthcare, and the big thing that we're going to be talking about is what your privacy is, or what your healthcare, what's going to be the future of healthcare is going to be your healthcare profile, or your health records, your personal health records, and a lot of that, depending, if you're a veteran or if you're part of the military, your records, they follow you. Where if you're not, if you're in the private sector, and they do follow, you do have, but you don't necessarily know what your health records are, because you just know that maybe you went to the doctor said you need to go to another doctor, and over time you do develop a record, but you don't know how much of that record you carry, or how much of that record is being held somewhere. Where is that somewhere? And so I think the big change that's happening now is standardization of records, and who has access to your information, your personal health information, PHI, personal, I guess, personal identifiable information, PII. And so your records at the end, they become something that is a footprint to you and identifies everything about you. And there's, like I said, in the when it comes to one side, that's a very standard way of living. Military, you carry your record, or somehow it goes with you everywhere. And the private sector, it's touch and go. You know that you go to the doctor, but at the end, at some point, all these records, they're going to be, because everything's now a signal. Everything's a one or a zero. It's on the internet somehow. It's a record. It's a system of record. What are those records? And what can you expect as far as privacy? What is realistic for us? So those are the topics of conversation. And then we may also talk about what's new, because there's some real crazy stuff going on in the news for when it comes to AI. Some of it you kind of expect, some of it you're like, wow, they're going overboard, but maybe we'll cover some of that stuff today too. But what do you think about the new? Again, we're not health professionals, we're not, but I've supported medical hospitals for over 20 years, so I know that some of the needs, but at the end, we're just trying to provide information to you guys out there, out in the world, and you tell us what you think.
Right. And uh, where to start? The spectrum is so wide, right?
Hmm.
Every industry is a spectrum, and within every industry, that you have spectrum of use cases. But all spectrum has one single touch point, right? Which is data, zeros and ones, right?
Hmm.
I don't care what industry you're in, you will experience zeros and ones, right? And that zeros and ones will only get faster because of how you, as an industry expert, are able to put together zeros and ones and have them process really fast for your use cases. And your use cases will be experienced to the hardware that you're engaging with, as in the services that are coming through your cloud, services that are coming through your websites, and services that are coming from your basement using your servers, right? Zeros and ones. All industry has a spectrum, but all industry comes together in zeros and ones. And these zeros and ones, where do I start? Right, like spectrum wise, if you look at it from one side of the spectrum, is that there's a patient who needs a service, and that patient that leaves after the service, right? And in between that, you have a whole process, right? So it's just like any business out there. They have sales, they have processing of the business, or whatever the sales that they're service that are providing, or product that they're providing, and how that product or service is being delivered, right? So if you look at it from that perspective, where can we fit AI machine learning solutions? Well,
Mhm.
the first thing that came to my mind is that, say, like, it, you really cannot fathom what the future is. But if we look at far back into a little past, as in just last 7 months, you can see where this healthcare industry is heading towards, right? One of my favorite example, and I know lucky we have a bunch of them, but one of my favorite examples is that they did a scan of the brain to figure out what image we were imagining, right? So it captured the Eiffel Tower in some person's head, in their brain, and then they drew it out. AI was able to draw it out. A very bad description of Eiffel Tower, but it was able to draw that picture that person was imagining. And the other one was that the ChatGPT large language like model was able to read the lyrics of a song that person was listening to, right? Through a scanning of the brain, right?
Wow.
Now, and I think I've mentioned this previously on this podcast, but like to me, it's this like I'm like I still want to verify. That sounds like outlandishly like this ghost stories that I don't believe in, right? It's just like I cannot believe that, but then again, I just cannot say no to that because that is like I would love to have somebody that actually did this and this podcast. Like, if you're listening, please come. But the idea that you are able to scan the brain, right, and then understand what this brain is experiencing, it, where's the future for that? Right? That future is schizophrenia, or type of disease that you like, Alzheimer dementia, or
Mhm.
type of diseases of like, you know, your thoughts are not aligning properly. You need psychological help, your mental health, right? Um, that's just the brain part of things, right? We're talking about cameras that can go inside of your body and have a very tiny, tiny camera that goes inside of your body and starts taking images inside of your body. So what you think you can get from an X-ray or some sort of other CT scan, now these images are, be able to like, capture these using actual camera inside of your body, and those cameras will be able to augment itself by providing all sorts of clear information, so that way the doctors can see the visual and say, yep, 100% guarantee, without ever touching your skin, opening up your skin, we can see these sort of healthcare concerns that we have to address, right? So that's brain healthcare, and then we're talking about the fact that uh, you know like the whole hospital system, right?
Yeah.
uh, your brain and the body will have to be inside of a hospital, and then within that hospital there's tons of operational things happening, right? So even if you leave the brain and the body outside of the equation and say, like, let's not have AI machine learning for those pieces, every hospital is a business center, and whole industry is trying to make profit off of patient care, because everybody wants to get paid. Nobody just wants to work there for free. So there's a business aspect to that, the operational aspect to it. So if you look at it from a strategical perspective, how that operation is able to not only automate things, and have their workforce be more productive, and have the workforce do more with very little,
Mhm.
right? How do you
Yeah.
augment AI machine learning for that? So the spectrum that I'm going from is that, if you have an operation and within that operation you're taking care of people's body and people's mind, or just community in general, there's so much broad application of the zeros and ones and how you process the zeros and ones fast
Mhm.
enough through your hardwares. That's yet to be seen, and it's an exciting time to live in for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen a lot of the different applications for AI, just in testing, um, and also discussions on what AI can do for us medically, or just augmenting. At the end, the AI is not doing anything special. It's not doing anything radical, but it is radically changing the way doctors can look at and look at medical history, or be able to look at. I'll give you an example. Like when they scan your lungs, that before they could scan your lungs and say, okay, we with that within an eye, the person or the doctor reading whatever, they would have to make identify certain things in your lungs. But then if you have something that's a standard, and it catches all the stuff that they didn't catch, or they have advances where AI says, look at this closer, and they provide a better perspective for the doctors to make better judgment calls on how to treat us. I think AI is that's where its home is. I think that we're never going to have. I don't. And it may be in the future, but not in our near future. Where you have a machine, they drop you in, and AI scans your whole body, and then and then 15, 20 minutes later, the little bell rings like a microwave, and you pops a lid, and you're completely healed of everything. We're far from that, but we're enabling where we're at now. The way AI is, we're enabling doctors to be able to have all the same tools to make them have or make better judgment calls when it comes to, like you said, diagnosing schizophrenia through verbal analysis, or brain scans through BMI, brain machine interfaces. I wanted to throw them together, machines. And you have all these different ways where AI can analyze data, and that's where the home is. But another part of the medical side is, we talked about it early, is the medical records. Medical records at the end, they've standardized on something called Epic, and I'm not setting Epic, or there's different types of medical software that maintains records, and that's important for us to know. I mean, right now, as a doctor, if you're not a doctor, or if you're not some kind of healthcare professional, or if you're not a provider, what does it matter? But it does. There's things about your information that you're going to have to know is being transmitted from one place to another, and your records, your information, whether you've had kids, whether you've had any types of surgeries, what your blood type is, if you have any type of morbidities, diabetes, any MIs, any of that stuff. I'm not a doctor, but again, all that information is kept on a record. Now, how that record is kept and how it's shared amongst hospitals is, well, that's changed. The industry's changed. Back in the day, you had to, again, have some kind of hard file that said, this is who I am, and carry that to doctor, or go from one doctor, and they would have some of your information, whatever you had, were looking at. But these records now are holistic. They have everything about you from the time that you're born to everything that you are. And those records need to be kept private. Now, whatever the privacy is, we'll figure that out. But those records are kept using standardized software. Now, in the government, they standardize on one thing, on the outside, they have another. But what those records are, now is being publicly shared really quick now. And that's a good thing if you want to be taken care of. But the other side of it is, not anybody, your information is more readily available. Now, what does that mean? Who has access to it, who has access to all your information, on a drop of a dime, that's something we still have to figure out because I don't have all the answers, but I know that it is now available for you in a lot of hospitals, and that's a good thing. But in the long run, again, how much of that do you feel secure with? So, going down the negative thing is it's a good thing for providers to have information. It's just that I've seen where again information can help others make decisions for helping the common good, or it turns into a dollars and cents thing. you know, where it's not about you touched on it, the business side of it, or you have a strategic side of it. I know, and it sounds like it's the same thing, but to me, it's totally different. And maybe you can help me understand the difference. I would hate for hospitals to be making decisions on my health on the business side of the house, where like they're like, you know what, we're going to treat this guy this way because this is how we do things because we know that our profit margins work better providing this type of medical care. Or take a different perspective is we need to be able to figure out how we can solve this problem and provide services for anybody with whatever medical procedures, and then we have to strategically figure out how that works. Now there's a difference in strategy and business. I don't know the difference because I'm a nerd, but I know what I would want my hospital to be. I don't want them to be a business Bill Gates run hospital. I would want my hospital to be run by, somebody that's more, you know, they're more concerned about, how do we really take care of a patient? And I know that that sounds far fetched. I don't know if that's clear or not, but I want to have a hospital that I can trust, not really focusing in on business. And I don't know if you go, I don't know where that goes, but you tell me
Yeah.
how that. What do you think?
Oh no, I want to capture something you mentioned earlier. By the way, if anybody's jumping into this conversation and listening to us talking about healthcare, disclaimer: we are not healthcare professional, not even the subject matter experts of any of this stuff. I tend to be shying away from healthcare information because I let the subject matter expert handle that. Because when it comes to healthcare, there's so many ways to get into the false information because you really are sensitive to your own health, and there's lots of misinformations out there. So we're not the healthcare subject matter expert. The reason we're talking about this healthcare is because you mentioned something here, like if you're not a doctor, if you're not a healthcare professional, you really don't know what's happening with your healthcare records, right? You don't have much of a details to it. I think that's very important to say it and repeat that over and over because there's tons of people that goes to get medical treatment, but until they need that medical record on their hand or somehow need to utilize that, they don't realize how difficult it is to get your hands on it. They don't realize where it is and how it's being stored. There's a whole lot of information that is specifically about you stored somewhere where you don't even know it exists like that, right? Not majority of the people. I think majority of the people don't really think about where their healthcare records is being sitting at, right? Um, that's really important. I think as a consumer, as a patient, you have to advocate for yourself. And part of the advocacy is to understand where your healthcare record is, right? Who's storing it and how it's being used. It's something that you really have to focus, just like you focus on, who's reading your email when you're not reading it. Right? Who's reading your who's watching you in the camera when you're not watching yourself in the camera, right? Like there's layers of things that you have to advocate for yourself because nobody else will. And more you know about these things, more you will be able to say, like, next time I will make a different decisions if I have to. Because most of the time we're actually opting in for these services. Just like this camera that we installed in our own house, well, we're saying like, hey, I'll let you use the camera. I'll let you use my internet. I'll let you, you know, have a video of me inside my own house, right? Just like healthcare, signing away the fact that we will record all this information and store it on your behalf somewhere. But access wise, it's not really for you to access. It's for us to access, right? So where am I going with this? Diving in deep. I want to go somewhere very dark. I really do because that captures people's attention. But we can reverse engineer it back to say like, okay, why do we really need that, even if it has the dark side to it, right? So the dark side of it is that, let's say, for example, the worst case scenario, is that you have a wearable, right? You wear wristwatch that is able to tell you time, but also is checking your pulse. Right? It's identifying, what sort of reaction do you have at the geocoordinate location, right? Where you're standing and what's around it and what it is that you're experiencing. Right? So it tells you time just like any dummy clock can, but this smartwatch will be able to say you are in the center of North Korea listening to Kim Jong Il giving a speech. Okay, that's a very dark scenario. Well, they don't have smartwatches, but if they do, the Kim Jong Il will be able to say anybody who's watching me at the speech wearing a smart watch should have a health like a heartbeat that matches to say you are literally listening and are very genuinely excited about what Kim Jong Il has to say. And that's a very dark scenario. And I'll give the credit where the credit is due. It's the Yuval Noah Harari's book where he talks about, you know, if you're listening to Kim Jong Il, the dictator, or just any dictator, right? And the dictator can measure how loyal you are based on your smartwatch by understanding what your heart rate is and how are your body is reacting to every word that you say, right? Are you being excited because dictators are talking like a dictator, and are you really doubting the dictator for talking like a dictator, right? So now he can discriminate against who's the loyal and who's not. That's a smartwatch capability. But on the other hand, very far from the dark side, the clear side is that these smartwatches these days will call 911 if your heart stops beating, right? Something happens to your body and there's nobody around. It can just go ahead and call 911 for you, or it can provide you with vital information like, hey, look, yesterday your heartbeat was like this, but today your heartbeat is like this. I can see the delta, and I should warn you, right? That is the other bright side of smartwatch. And this is not necessarily AI machine learning, but there's machine learning built into the systems to give you those information, right? What the zeros and ones can capture, how do you process that information within your smartwatch without ever sharing with a dictator or somebody who wants to look at the smartwatch activity without your permission, right? With your permission, they'll be able to look at that information from your smartwatch and say, yeah, you accepted, you opted in to give me that information. So here we are. I'm looking at your health records and looking at by day, and I'm able to understand what your health is going through on a 6 months period. Where, I mean, 6 days later, I forget my own healthcare information. 6 months, forget it. I'm not tracking it that hard, right? I want to give you a middle range of that dark and very good example. Is if your smartwatch is able to identify what sort of body reaction you're having, um, and it understands that you're in the shopping center and you're walking around, say Neiman Marcus, or you're walking around next to the M&M store, right? It can understand your body's reaction. It can understand that, hey, this person is not really a person that will shop at Neiman Marcus because the body didn't react that well, or not. Excuse me, not well, but as in like it didn't really pay that much attention to Neiman Marcus, and the body's reaction wasn't really something different. But when you walk next to the M&M store or donut store or like ice cream store, your mind goes all over the place. Your body starts reacting differently. Now it knows it can create a profile of you as a person who is very addicted to sugar, right? And then start selling you the sugar information because based off of your body reaction in the shopping center as you're walking past a store with lots of sugar in it, right? Or let's say, for the example, you're a teenager and you're very much into sneakers, right? You love wearing Nikes and Adidas or whatever the case is. And now it can target you specifically. And I mean, I don't want to use the word very lightly, but it is literally manipulating, right? Because these days, advertisements are targeted towards you. Everything I say, my phone picks it up and says, "Oh, I heard you talking about this topic. Let me put an ad here, literally based off of what you said." Right? I see it all the damn time. It's getting ridiculous, but it is that deep going down the path where we have to wear wearable smartwatches, and these smartwatches are monitoring our health, and that health information could turn into a profile that could lead us to a path where if we don't advocate for ourselves, there's no reason to advocate for us. There's not that many people that will advocate for us because of dollars and cents. Business takes priority, not our information.
Yeah, and that's where it's scary. We want to enable smart decisions. We want to support it. I've designed, a lot of different systems within medical centers to help make smarter decisions, and that's where I want to live. That's where I think that um, we're all trying to figure this thing out called life, and if we can help people, that's what we want to do. If I can make a system to help, and I say save one's life, but really help someone's life, that makes you feel like a nerd superhero. But at the same time, you know that same information can be twisted, and so I don't want to look at my health as a business opportunity for someone else. I want the backbone of whatever healthcare system to say, hey, you know what? No matter we're not worried about the dollars and cents. We're worried about you. You
Right.
know, and I guess that's a foolish thing to want. Like in America, that's not like realistic. Because everything costs. Healthcare system is, and I know they've tried one thing or another, but you have other countries where that's not the same thing. The commoner, everyone has the same opportunity for healthcare. Now, I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but if we can help people, that's our main goal, right? So, how does information do that, or how do we protect our information is another aspect. So I'll give you a for example. If I have a credit score, that's who I am financially. Anyone that looks at my credit score, to look at my credit score, you can take a little bit of an outside view to say, okay, this is who this guy is, kind of. But to have a you know go into and pull information for my credit score or try to submit to change my credit score, when it happens.
That's right.
Medical records, you have no clue. You have nothing. You don't know anything. And then at the end, you don't know what's being shared or when it's being shared or how it's being shared. We're providing information and we don't know it to whomever, and they're getting more controlled where your records are going to be a binary blip, or one or a zero, and anyone will have access to it, just like they have access to our credit information, just like they or whatever whomever. If we can't protect, like you said, if we can't protect ourselves, who's going to protect us? At the end, it comes down to us and making smarter decisions and asking the right questions. And I think that's where we're at. We have to figure out where and how to protect who we are, not only on the internet, but as more of us and our digital twin. You've coined that, you know, several times in our different AI podcasts, but we have us on the internet. So whomever I am, my twin on the internet, my information twin, who has access to all the bits. And at the end, privacy, whether it be your medical records, whether it be your internet records, your browsing records, your financial records, we need to have better control over that.
That's right.
What does that mean? I know, but for privacy, so on the it's getting easier, I think, because there's something that I think all hospitals, and again, I mentioned it earlier, they're uh, all pretty much medical records are being unified to something called an epic system. And I'll give everyone a little bit of history. I can give you history only because, and I'm not going to go too far into who will, or what, but the fact of the matter is that the medical industry has standardized medical records on this fantastic system created by the Department of Veteran Affairs. Okay, something called, um, well, Epic took their base operating system from a FOIA request from the Department of Veteran Affairs. And it's a fantastic system. It's worked great for years. You've got developers, homegrown. It's been tweaked and it's been created internally for years. And it was such a good system that when it hit the outside, it became a fantastic standardized system for the medical side on the private side. Now, those records now, much like the government records, are now a single file for any given person. When on the public side, they're going to be a single file for everybody on the private sector, and that's a good thing. But how do we figure out how to protect ourselves once our record is a one or a zero? You know, how do we start to speak epic? I don't know, guys. I mean, those are real questions, but
Right.
at the end, our records are going to be a one and a zero, and they are going to be accessed. So, what role do we play on how did that, because right now I can go into my phone, download an app, and say, all right, my anything having to do with my financial stuff, my credit score, let me know. We should have something similar for our medical records
Right.
where we can download an app and say, all right, these people they've looked at your records, but when someone goes to modify or add to your record, you see it real time. You know that it's happening, and you have a connection with your more of who you are, as opposed to now, someone else knows more about you than you know about yourself.
Yeah, I want to take a, a walk down the Alice in Wonderland. I
Hmm.
typically do that, and I guess I'm known for that, right? You know, walking down the Alice in Wonderland, you're gonna start seeing weird things, But one of the things that I'm envisioning right now, like you said, digital twin, right? A silhouette of yourself inside the computer. um that's the weird part. It's like, oh wait, I can see myself inside the computer, and this computer piece is blocking all sorts of invasions, right? Invasions of your privacy, invasion of looking into who it is that you are, trying to create a profile about you without your acknowledgement, without you understanding how that profile is being used against you, for you, or whatever the case is, opt in or not opt out, right? So this silhouette is like, blocking with his hands, and turning those data up like, hey, can't take that, no, give it back.
Hmm.
Like, oh, you saw that, nope, I'm going to change it, I'm going to put like some cover up on it so you can see it, right? Oh, you're trying to look over my shoulder, can't do that, get out of here, I see you. Which on a daily basis we don't experience sitting in our home or sitting in our chair, like trying to see that happening. It doesn't happen. But there's a digital twin of us that is just
Hmm.
doing literally that, right?
Yeah.
So as you're discussing that, that's the visual I have. Like, how cool would that be, right? Like, you actually have a digital version of you that's defending and going on offensive for you
Yeah.
as needed, right? With certain measures that you have put in place, right? So it can say like, financial information. Yep, I'm going to track that. Oh, lucky,
Hmm.
I see this. What do you want to do about this? Right? Oh,
Yeah.
somebody's accessing your healthcare record from this specific IP address in this location. What do you want to do about it? Right? I mean, we have those capabilities already in some aspect, but just
Yep.
not in all aspects. So when you have that digital twin that is able to
Hmm.
24 hours a day guard your information with your consent, right? And is able to keep you alert and alarmed, right? And I think we are working towards that. We have that solution, but it's very slow to adopt. So back in 2017, the main conversation we had in the Fordham University for United Nations wanted to hand out everybody a blockchain crypto. Excuse me, never say blockchain and crypto in the same word. I hate that.
Yeah, blockchain. Yeah, at
Yeah,
least at
yeah.
least a blockchain ledger or
Blockchain ledger. It gives you a blockchain.
yeah.
What do you call those things where you're able to access your blockchain? It's cryptography. Like, what's that key? Right? It's
Yeah,
a
yeah. Okay, so yeah, you
the
depending
key.
on the type of encryption you would
Right.
have either you have asymmetric or you have symmetric encryption, and you
Right.
would have your keys that have access into your
Right.
encryption.
You don't lose the key. You want to have the key. So
Yeah.
they hand you a key from your birth, right? Not necessarily birth, but let's talk. That's the scenario, right? So your birth information is inside of this blockchain, right?
Hmm.
And then as you grow, it understands your elementary grade. It sees your elementary footprint as you're growing up, and your a healthcare record that is inside of this blockchain, the key that allows you to access your
Hmm.
birth record,
Like
your
Gattaca,
housing record, and as you grow, your graduation information, your driver license, or you bought your first home, that deed is
your
inside of that.
DNA.
Your DNA, right?
Hmm.
CRISPRs and all this kind of people can say like, "There you go, I'm giving it all to you, and this is inside of your key." And it's only allowed for you to release as long as you want to release it, right?
Hmm.
So your life will becoming super annoying, but I think over time we can tweak that, improve that. It's just somebody will want to say, "I want to see your driver license." Really, I really need to see it because I need to verify who you are, and you're going to say, "Yep, I'm going to log in and give you my access." Only you can see it, but you only see it for long enough that you cannot steal that information, right? Uh,
Hmm.
oh, you want to see my birth certificate? Here's my birth certificate. Flash, right? And I don't want to get too excited about zero knowledge proof, right? That's the capability that we've been working since '80s, trying to figure out a zero knowledge proof that allows to you to see information, which is to confirm that whatever I'm supposed to show you without ever showing you, you can have the high confidence that I have
Hmm.
shown it to you, but you have never seen it. And that's the gist of zero knowledge proof, which is very sophisticated. But the blockchain technology will enable these kind of capabilities, right? The
Hmm.
capabilities to say, yeah, I own that home, right?
Hmm.
You have a piece of ledger. The government has a piece of ledger that says or this key person owns this information, this home, but Zillow can never figure out who owns this property. Government knows some information about me. I know all my information, but Zillow can never figure out who the owner is, right?
Yep.
But Zillow will have a zero knowledge proof to say uh, somebody does own it, and it's not an agency. It's not a hedge
Hmm.
fund. It is an individual that has an individual social security number owns this, or EIN number that owns it, right?
Hmm.
Tax information. So we see the complexity of that. We sort of have it at this point,
Some
but we
kind
need
of
to
anonymity.
explore. Yeah,
Some kind of anonymity, something that says, "Hey, I don't want to be identified individual in amongst my neighborhoods. I want to be one of many, and all you know is I'm one of many, and that's it." And not that, but anonymity, that being able to protect who I am, and just like you said, with some kind of block ledger. But we're gonna have who we are. It's gonna all. That's where we're going. Everything's going to be some kind of binary one. It's going to be some kind of signal, information, data somewhere, and how we protect it it should be up to us. It should be up to, like you said, where if we want to go to a doctor, we give him access to our information. He gets access to it for whatever he needs to do for whatever time period, and then poof, he gets his chance to write into the medical record, and then after that, boom, he don't have access to my medical records anymore. He doesn't need access to my if at that point, if I decide to go somewhere else. But we can control who we are as opposed to everybody and outside controlling who we are, and that's where it's always been. And people were okay with that because, in a good sense, a lot of us, we are okay with that. Ignorance is bliss. I don't know. I mean, what does it matter? I'll ask the doctor. He'll figure it out. You know, yes, that is a good staple, and that's probably who you want to trust as a doctor. But we found cases where people maybe shouldn't have trusted their doctor, or our information, we should be in charge of it. And it's not to say one way that doctors are bad people or bad or good people. They're gonna have. We just put them in a role as they're trying to help us, but it's a give and take. Anytime you need help, you choose who you want to go to. And then when you choose him, all of a sudden you're on the other end where they're controlling who you are. That's just not a great feeling. You want to feel that they're there to help you, and then you can control the information. I think that's, again, it's I don't want to feel like I'm getting going on a broken record, but again, it's things that we need to talk about,
yeah, yeah.
and make
I
it
think
more real, in the
I think
future.
to understand there's a doctor and there's a patient in a
Hmm.
single room, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how short that connection is.
Mhm.
because this connection is very, very wide, like miles wide. And I'll give you one example. I think this is very important to talk about. The fact is, a doctor doesn't have to be a good or bad. A doctor is just one of the actor, right?
Mhm.
Just like you are an actor, you are a patient. So there's a patient and there's a doctor. Now, in between you, there's a miles of dots and nodes and connection that is happening, which is to say, the doctor is accessing your healthcare record on the system that is miles away, right? And you're the patient that's giving them the doctor this information. You are sitting right next to him, yet there's miles of distance between you and the doctor because the doctor has to travel through the doctor's system has to travel
Mhm.
to the hospital has a broker that accesses the cloud has all the information, and that cloud is sitting in Ohio while you're sitting in Texas, right?
Mhm.
So what I'm trying to get at is that the fact is that experience that you have with the doctor is just what you see. What you don't see is all the other actors that are, not even sure who you are as a patient, but if it needs to be, they'll be able to identify you with very simple press of a button, right? And
And then you
that's
give
where
them,
this
and then you give them the keys, though. That's the cool
right.
thing is, you know what? You say the doctor says, "Oh, I couldn't get into the medical record." And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Let me give you the keys."
Let me
Wouldn't
give
that
you
be
the
cool?
keys. Yeah, exactly. So that right now is like a press of a button where they're able to access this information.
Yeah.
Yet it's not that they have malicious intent. It's just that where it's stored, anybody with a malicious intent can look into that and do whatever type of damage or harm, or even the
Mhm.
good things. I don't know the spectrum of things that are possible, but let me go back to what you said earlier about somebody's looking it up, right? Somebody's able to look up that information in your medical healthcare. So where does the AI and machine learning fit into all of this? Because these are the structures that we already have. What I'm recommending is that take the structure and put a blockchain on it, so that way blockchain locks this data in a way that gives you the key, so you can insert that key in and out and say like, well, only my driver license, nothing about my healthcare record. Only my healthcare record, but nothing about my house information. Don't give them my
Mhm.
house information. I don't want that. Emails, yeah, they can have it, no problem, right? That's how much of a lock you can have with the current infrastructure you have using blockchain
Mhm.
technology. But on top of that, you have AI and machine learning sitting there. Well, actually, let me insert this piece. Your blockchain security has to be AI and machine learning based because the encryptions are highly vulnerable for quantum computing. But that's another topic. What you have is an AI machine learning solutions, which you're already very accustomed to, which is ChatGPT, right? A doctor is like, looking up, look, you're sitting right next to him, or you're sitting in a computer somewhere else. I don't know, telemedicine, right? And doctor is chatting with a system to say like, hey, I'm chatting with this patient. I need to access the healthcare record. And the system goes like, well, what's his key? Well, a doctor gets the key, doctor puts it in, and then the system is actually working on your behalf while the doctor is reviewing your files, right? It's just like, what kind of information do you need to know? Well, give me this sort of template, this sort of ABC test that they have recently done. Okay, great. I have all this information.
Mhm.
Now it goes through a whole lot of chat with the doctor. So the doctor is able to actually examine. Let me give you another example of that. Is a doctor is to say, what sort of risk does this person have that I need to really address right now? Because I don't have time to read through the whole profile. Can you read that information and give me the high risk that I can address this person right now? Well, you see cancer patient all day long, but this person literally has HIV/AIDS.
Mhm.
That's risky to
Yeah.
address.
Not funny, but yeah, it
Not
goes one
funny.
way or another. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's the capability of a doctor to say, I only have 10 minutes to see this person. I don't have time to go through the chart of 200 pages and figure out which the high risk they're in. So as
Mhm.
you're discussing these capabilities, AI machine learning, ChatGPT like system will be the forefront of this capability, right?
Yeah.
Well, so you're not really accessing the whole healthcare, just like you shouldn't, because of the privacy violation, but also because you don't have time and you will make mistakes off of the information that you're reading as a human being and given 10 minutes of time to spare with the person, right? So
Mhm.
you see a cancer patient all day long. That's what you're accustomed to. You can't get this person confused with the cancer. You have to
Yeah.
treat this person because of HIV/AIDS, or I don't know the terms of the dangerous diseases, but you would want your doctors to know you personally. Like it's
Mhm.
personalized in a sense that he's treating you, not all of his other patients, right? Um,
Mhm.
I know I'm getting kind of excited about it, but it's a spectrum of conversation to have. But 45 minutes is too short of a time to cover all this.
Yeah, no, it's just it's not enough time, but we are bringing, just at least with this podcast, letting people just really think about more, what their medical records are. And in the US, again, it's not just in the US, but mainly in the US. Well, just because this is where we all, at least this, a bulk of our audience is located in the US. And that's who we work with, specifically with veterans. So again, we're going to be talking about, things specifically with the US. But again, it applies to everybody. In Europe, they in the UK, in other countries, in some cases, they look at privacy different than what we look at it. It's not we'll just say, capitalistic society. We're not trying to make a buck off of someone's malady, okay? But someone's got to make a buck. Someone's got to make medicine. Someone's got to figure out how the medicine was engineered. Someone's got to turn it into a pill. Someone's got to make a dollar.
For
That's
sure.
understood.
That's
I'm not
understood.
saying that. But
Accepted.
what I'm saying is, whenever you look at a human and say, all right, we've got the science figured out, okay? Now we have X amount of humans that need this. We can't charge $35,000 for this stuff because some of these people only make $35,000 a year. So there's a way, okay, so whatever manufacturing, whatever you did to get to that point, I understood there has to be a balance where that process needs to continue, but at the same time, if you're already a billionaire, if you already have, there's a way of saying, okay, when is it a right balance for us to be able to help people? And I don't know what that balance is, but I know that question needs to be morally asked, but no one's ever going to really, well, the guys making the money are never going to say, stop, I'm making too much money, guys, please, let's help people. And that's what I wish would happen, that somebody that has too much says, you know what, we're going to provide healthcare a different way, and really create something holistic for people. That, okay, the balance is business, but no, the balance is strategy. How do we help people and
Right.
then keep afloat, keep helping people? That's
Earn your,
where I'm sorry.
and earn your income while you're keeping
Yeah.
people's interest in the forefront.
Yeah, because I think they said doctors aren't what really. If you go to see a doctor, on your doctor bill, the doctor's bill is only like 5% is what the doctor's actually charging. The rest is everybody in
Yeah.
between, the
Yeah.
filing the papers, the medical providers, the insurance, everything in between. Everyone's kind of getting money on top of that service. They
That
just
ink from a pen that the nurse wrote with cost about $5. That's just the ink, not
yeah,
the pen itself.
exactly. Yeah. So
I think you started off in a very good trail that I would like to follow through. Like, because you talked
yeah,
about Epic and you talked about where Epic came from, because it came from a VA, and the VA don't necessarily have to go around and say like, well, guys, I'm looking for a solution for the whole damn country. I'm just looking for a solution for VA purposes, and the VA's health record information, like that M language, mumps, all this language that is very hard to have people trained on, right? But if you look at it from that perspective, I think that applies here as well. This action that the VA took in order to figure out an M language, apply MOMS, applying to the EHR on the database, so that way it's reading zeros and ones very frequently without any latency, and is able to provide you with the right and articulate solutions based on what's being stored in that database, right? Um, an enterprise would put that in a frame of, I need to have the scaled enough so that I can sell it for a higher price. Let's say, for example, $35,000 a piece. Where VA looked at it, was like, no, I need this for VA internal activities. So it doesn't matter what the cost is, but keep the cost to the minimal, but still give me a solution that is super, super fast and works very, very well, regardless
mhm,
of what the environment is. You take this to Antarctica, it still works the same way because VA created it, right? I think that applies here as well, because if you look at it from the veteran side of things, well, the veterans information is stored inside of VA. Who else is tapping into this veterans information that we need to guard the veterans information? And how do we give the veterans the access to
Mhm.
the key with that blockchain capability that VA provides, right? And once over time that is matured enough, now somebody else like Epic can come from outside and say, "Wow, this system works so well. I can actually sell it for very cheap because you already done the heavy lift and shifting, right? You've already created something that I can just say copy and paste this and make it marketable to the rest of the world. And when you do market to the rest of the world, I can sell it for $1 a piece instead of 35,000 because if I was to create it myself, it will cost everybody $35,000, right? But because VA has created it, and VA has created it in such a way that it didn't, even if it cost the $35,000 a piece, it was created by VA, done for VA. Now VA has proof of concept saying it works meticulously, and now we can lift and shift to the commercial side, and commercial side can benefit from this research or this process, right? I
Right.
think that needs to happen here as well. So there's this whole infrastructure that VA has. Put a blockchain on it, put an AI machine learning chat GPT like system or other AI machine learning capability, have VA do it, and then from the VA, somebody like Epic can come and take it and commercialize it. I think that still
Well,
applies here. It's sort of like a going to the moon. Like commercial side will never go to the moon.
I think
We
we've
did,
gone
we
too
did it,
far,
so
too
never
far
gonna do
into what the VA does. But I'll tell you this much. I'll tell you this much that there is big news about AI and Microsoft. Microsoft is taking Copilot now. I think as of 2 days ago, and we were talking about this before in one of our other podcasts, where we can't consistently keep having this one repository of Chat GPT, and the whole world is talking to Chat GPT, right? Everybody, and there's one repository that Chat GPT would just say Chat GPT 4.5 or 5, whatever the case may be, whichever API is listening and everyone's responding to, everyone's going to one source. The abstraction layer is everybody is getting to the same point. Now, that's not good. But Microsoft, they said, all right, all right, all right. Like anything else, they say, you know what? We figured this out. We can sell you your own open AI, your own version of Chat GPT, and it'll be for you only. Only you have access to your version of Microsoft's Chat GPT, or
like an edge
um
on the edge.
or whichever solution I guess that they're pushing now. And that in itself creates the distributed AI that I think will help protect people's information somewhat. Now, I don't know how air gapped these AIs are. I mean, they're probably logically separated. They're not air gapped, but if they can logically separate something, they can air gap it, and you can have your own AI API, whatever Microsoft is providing for everyone else can be isolated to your environment. Now that is cool. I thought that was fantastic. That's getting now to where regulation. Microsoft is seeing regulation ahead,
Mhm.
and they're preparing for it, because that's the first time I've heard where somebody starts to kind of really say, you know what, you can have your own AI. Not everybody shared AI. You have your own.
That's right. So this is the edge device that is, on the list of top 10 technology that's coming down the pipeline. It has to,
Hmm.
along with Trisk and XAI, which is explainable AI, and Trisk is trust, risk, and security of AI. So if you look at those three devices, edge device, Trisk, and explainable AI, um, we will live in a different world. We are already living in a different world, but how much this world will change in the next decade, um, it'll be insane. It'll be insane to the fact that, like I was talking to Lucky about it earlier, I've written probably 80 different script in last 2 days.
Hmm.
80 different script, and it took me less than a few hours because of ChatGPT. If
Wow.
you know how long it will
Really?
take me to write one script, it will take me a lifetime because I will never do it. I just refuse to write a code. I won't even start. Like my brain literally will say, "No, I need to sleep tonight." If I start writing a code, I'm not gonna be able to
Hmm.
sleep tonight. So I'm not gonna do that code. But
That's
I did.
wild.
I wrote that many script like for last 2 days because I've been doing so many things inside of my own device that I previously was not able to do until the chat GPT came out. Now that
Mhm.
ChatGPT is around, I'm writing a script for my own laptop to do things that I'm not, necessarily on a website writing these codes, right?
Mhm.
For internally for my laptop to use, I'm writing this code. So my laptop is organized in such a way that it favors me. So when you're talking about edge device, I think that experience will multiply even more than what I just said. That now not only do you have control over your device because you can write the script for it, these script that you're writing, it's going to use a large language model to engage with you as well, right? As in,
Mhm.
your laptop will be able to come alive to say, okay, what is that you need me to do right now? Well, let me write a script for you so you understand it better. Because if I vocalize it, you're not really understanding it, right? So that's the kind of capability we're talking about with large language model. Because Siri and Alexa, you can talk to Siri and Alexa, but the reason Siri and Alexa is not effective is because it's not localized. And that's a big problem. Because it's not localized, because it's not on the edge, it has to travel to wherever the data center is, process that data, and bring that back to you, right? I mean, the amount of complexity that Amazon has to go through to put Alexa in your house, the research that goes behind it. And I'll give you one example of it is that
Mhm.
when you are in a room and there's multiple obstacle between you and the Alexa machine, Alexa has to figure out a way to capture what it is that you said between the obstacles. And that's after it has to figure out how to understand what language you're speaking, right? Did you say something in English or Chinese Mandarin? What language did you say it in? And on top of that, it has to figure out, are you supposed to respond to that? And how are you going to respond to that? What was said and how do you respond to that after you figure out, okay, how do I understand what he said between the obstacles? Because he's not in the same room as me, right? The Alexa. So the problem with that is that because it has to go through all those obstacles and then process the information and then come back to a solid answer in a split second, it takes some time, right? But it's not also it doesn't have its own large language model built in, as in it doesn't have a capability of understanding languages and respond to that language off of what's being said. So if you are able to like plug in your Alexa and you configure it to a language that is like, for example, you're speaking German, and it has a large language model that downloads for German language. So that way, when you're interacting with Alexa in German language, it's not going back and forth to process that data somewhere else. It's processing that information right then and there. And it has that sophisticated semiconductor chips that is able to process those information in real time without ever leaving to the internet gateway. Um, Edge device, I think, will revolutionize everything we're doing today. And only way
Mhm.
we can do a hell of a job with it if everybody was aware and educated about these topics, so they can advocate how much of control they would like to have over Alexa rather than no control whatsoever. Right? It's all behind the curtains. That's what's happening.
That's funny. I can imagine that they're gonna get down to where there's gonna be an AI library that they can deploy, and
That's
the
right.
AI library is gonna be like 20 gigs, and they say, "Look, we can simulate every part of what it takes to communicate
That's right.
using, we'll just say, a large language model, but let's not say a large language model. They're going to call it a LLM or a limited language model, and say,
Mm,
look, this is what you get. You can get the AI for just, hey, help desk, hey, answer the phone, or you can get an AI for a help desk, answer the phone, troubleshoot, or you can get the AI help desk troubleshoot and the tier three, support that's AI based,
right.
or you can get the big boy, the gold, the we'll call it the the gold package or the platinum package, some kind of package, and you
Executive.
get the developer code and you get the help desk and you get the tier 3 and all of it AI based, and you can either download it in segments and it's all distributed, and it's pretty much saying, oh, you know what, we got the language, we got basically communication through language models, at least for humans, and you can buy it and it's distributed in a package, and
Wow.
like everything else is.
Yeah, like a laptop that has multiple configuration. So if you pay for the one that has a high memory and RAM speeds and all that, right? It'll be just like a Microsoft AI laptop, right?
Hmm.
It will come with all those features, and you have to pick and choose. Do you pick limited language model, or do you pick the one that has you know what, limited language model? You should register that, trademark it. That's
Limited language model. Hey, I need a trademark actually, and we'll talk about it more, but some more other things. But yeah, between us, I think that that's a good thing, because this is what it comes down to: is we don't know. It's not that we don't trust humans, but humans innately we want good, but the minute someone has opportunity to get an advantage or an edge, they'll do it. They'll do it. They'll do it in a heartbeat. Now, what that edge is or what that advantage is, doesn't matter. So I'm just trying to. Oh, at the end, our information, we want to protect it.
right,
If someone wants an edge, we want to be able to say no. Everyone plays fair here,
right.
and that's let blockchain, cryptography, some kind of ledger, AI, machine learning, all those things combined, and then developing AIs, neural networks that'll combine a lot of these different data sources, and then be able to process things for us, not so much against us, but where we have control of the AI responses would be fantastic. I don't even know how. I know that there's going to be some kind of certificate structure, public chain of something that we could develop, but it's a way to protect our privacy in the long run. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Ay, 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 ay.
But
Today's been
that sums it all up, right? The
yeah,
way I feel about
yeah.
I
Yeah, it's we've got a long, but you know what? It looks promising now because before we didn't have. I don't think we had as many answers, and we had more questions, and now we have a lot of questions, more questions, but there's some real answers.
That's right. And it's coming down the pipeline.
Yep.
Well, thanks for everybody for listening. Tune in next week where we have another episode of AyAyAyAI. Adios.